is that instead of your peer just talking to any other peers in the network, you could limit your peer to just talking to people that you know personally. And then we use the small world network idea to allow the network to self-organize into a small world network with the constraint that you don't control, or with the constraint that the network does not control the actual connectivity between peers. And so that approach could be used to run Locutus as a mesh network, which I'm very excited about, because one of my big concerns, and this is, so some might say paranoid, but a situation where we do have maybe major civil unrest, where the internet infrastructure just goes down. And in that case, I think we really have a very serious problem, because without a means of communication, it's going to be very difficult to get our society back on track.
I don't like how you were about 16 years ahead of your time predicting the censorship issue, and now you're predicting that, well, once there's complete civil unrest, it's like,
well,
please be wrong.
I'm not predicting it. It's more a contingency.
It's good to be prepared.
Yeah, and so in a situation like that, I think it's going to be essential that we have a global communication network that does not rely on this very centralized infrastructure. And so we've been looking at stuff like LoRa radio, which is this kind of short range, relatively kind of 1-2 mile range radio, so that we could run Locutus because I think part of the problem, if the internet does go down, is we're all so dependent on these highly centralized data centers to run all of these services. So even if we could still communicate directly with other internet users, because WhatsApp is down and Google's down and Gmail's down, we're not actually going to be able to do anything. Whereas because Locutus actually runs participating in the network, it's a way that you can provide decentralized services that would be able to survive a catastrophic collapse of the infrastructure.
Is this similar to the Invisible Internet Project, or like a pseudo-Tor Invisible Internet Project combination, if the small network world is the goal?
The IIP, the I2P, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I2P, it actually grew out of, I think the creator of I2P was involved in Freenet before they built I2P, but I think, in my mind, I2P is quite similar to Tor in that they're onion routing networks. So I'm not sure, I haven't looked that closely at I2P in recent years, so it's possible that they've moved more in the direction of mesh networking, but so far as I'm aware, I don't think that's the goal of that project. Let's see.
Do we have any other interesting questions before we call it a day? The salty one. Okay, I forgot. Why would governments not just ban it and jail the creator? This is the million and first. Use cryptography to build a decentralized utopia project. The previous million didn't topple any entrenched power structure and never posed anything resembling a real risk of doing so. Why should the next one be a threat? For the next 100 million of them, like a salty part in parentheses. And no, this one also won't succeed, because technology is not the thing that causes people to join centralized social networks, and technology will not get them to leave either. The repeated belief that it's just a matter of the right technology coming along or being put together tends to show that the people behind these efforts don't actually understand the problem they're trying to solve.
I
was sorting the Reddit thread by Salty.
Yeah. Well, I would disagree with that analysis. I think really it is fundamentally a technology problem. It's an architectural problem. The original architectural mistake was going with the client-server architecture. And the reason we went with the client-server architecture is that's how the World Wide Web worked, and the World Wide Web ended up being the killer app of the internet for the most part. So I think it is fundamentally an architectural problem, and as evidence of that, you can just look at the number of attempts at building decentralized networks over the years. Freenet was the first, and
you know, and it works. People use it. It, you know, it's kind of been ongoing development ever since. It was kind of, you know, has been kind of clunky, which is one of the problems we're addressing. But yeah, I think it's fundamentally this idea of how do you build decentralized services. It has not been a solved problem. And the reason why, I mean, I didn't, with Locutus is maybe my fifth attempt at kind of building a successor to Freenet. And it was really when I kind of hit on the specific design of Locutus that I realized, you know, this is actually the right approach. And I just don't think that's existed before. So yeah, I would disagree that it's a technology problem. It is a technology problem. The problem is that the path of least resistance is centralized, and that's why everything is centralized. But my hope is that now the path of least resistance, or at least similar resistance, will be building decentralized services.
How far along is this? If somebody wanted to get this to beta tested.
So we're currently in development. The next kind of big milestone is where we'll release an SDK, which will allow people to start experimenting with software on top of Locutus, and they'll be able to test it locally. And then the next kind of milestone after that will be taking those local decentralized apps and running them over the peer-to-peer network. And so we hope to have a prototype release really in the next 2 to 3 months. That's the kind of timeline. We've been working on this for about 2 years in earnest.
Now, we here at Fudo have given you a legendary grant to continue moving forward with this project. If other people would like to give a grant in order for you to continue this development of this, where can they find you?
That would be great. So you can go to freenet, all one word, .org, and there's information there both about Locutus and about the Freenet Classic, and you're welcome to, you know, I can be reached at ian@freenet.org, which is kind of easy to guess. And so if you're interested, if you want to make a kind of small donation, you can do so via the Freenet website. You can do it in using a credit card, Bitcoin, Monero, whatever you want. If you're in a position to provide a larger grant, then definitely send me an email and we'll talk. IAN at freenet.org.
Right, and for the viewers out there, there is an application process in the description below for anybody else who is interested in this grant process. We are looking to give grants out to people, projects, and organizations that have been focused on tech freedom and giving sovereignty of your devices, your software, your hardware, and your platforms back to the end user where it belongs. These are grants with no strings attached of anywhere from 5, 6, and sometimes 7 figures to people who've been doing excellent work in this field. We want to hear from more of you. Do email down below, and there is a little list of questions. You just answer those. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. All right.